Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Hello and good afternoon. Welcome back to the latest episode of our Musical Musings program. We air this program every Wednesday at 1 p.m., and it is broadcast to you from Rajamakan University of Technology, Peranakan. I will be bringing this program to you in two parts. For the first part, we will introduce a song and the band or performer that does the song, and we will talk about the main themes of the song, what it's all about, what's the song about. We'll also discuss the band a little bit, the history of the band, just to give you some background information. Then, after we talk about the song a little bit, we will listen to that song. After we listen to the song, we will come back for the second part of our program, and we will analyze the lyrics. The lyrics are the words to the song. So we're going to look especially at any vocabulary, slang, or sayings, which we call idioms, which may be difficult to understand. This is an English program, so we are going to look at anything that's difficult to understand in English. Okay. Then, after that, that'll be the end of our program, and we will bring you the news and the latest updates from the university as usual.
Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Gary Gray, and I am your host for this Musical Musings program. I'm an American English teacher here at Rajamakan University of Technology, Peranakan. I have been teaching here for about 7 years, and if you listen to this program, you know that I mention often that I do like to incorporate music into my teaching. It is good for listening skills, trying to understand what a song is saying, what it's about. So I like to incorporate that into my teaching, and therefore here we are doing a program about that. Okay, so for this week, we are going to be doing the song Riders on the Storm by The Doors. I will tell you right away that this is a little bit of a tricky song to analyze because I'm not even really sure what it's about. I've tried to research it, and there may not be a good explanation for what it's about. I'll talk about that a little bit when we discuss the song. First, though, let's talk about the band that performs this song. The band is called The Doors. And there was actually a movie made about them. So if you want to find that movie, you can watch the movie about them. And I believe the name of the movie is just the name of the band. I think it's just The Doors. So it's Doors, D-O-O-R-S, like you open a door. It's The Doors. Okay, so this band was formed, in 1965. So it's a very old band. A lot of times, you know that I like to do older music on here. One of the reasons I like to do older music is I have found that here in Thailand, a lot of older music is popular. So I think a lot of Thai folks like that style of music. But it seems like most people here know the same songs, the same old songs. For example, they know a few songs by the Bee Gees, or they know Take Me Home Country Roads by John Denver. Some people here have heard of the song Rasputin by Boney M. That one's kind of a surprise to me that people here know that song. Not everyone knows that one, but some people know that song, and it surprises me because it's not that popular in in America. Nobody in America even knows that song. People at the time did when it came out. It was a little bit popular when it came out. But nowadays, unless you're my age, so you kind of grew up then, or a little bit older, that came out a little bit before my time. But I have older siblings, so I kind of listen to their music. So I listen to older music myself. So I'm familiar with it. But unless you're an older person, you're probably not familiar with that song. We've actually done that song here on this radio program. That's Rasputin by Boney M. So anyway, it surprises me that a lot of people here in Thailand know that song. So this is why I like to focus on the older music. I think it's a style that most Thai people appreciate and like. Not all Thai people. Some of my students, when I play them older music, they're like, "Oh, teacher, don't you know any new music?" I do know some new music. Not a lot of it. I'm not a big fan of newer music. It's mostly the style. It's mostly pop music. That's kind of the style, the genre that is popular today. And that's not my favorite genre of music. So, but it's not that I don't like modern music. There are some bands that still perform other styles of music, which I do listen to, that are quite modern, that are performing today, that have just formed within the last 5 or 10 years. So I do still listen to modern music. And some of it's quite good. But I like to focus our program on older music. So again, The Doors. They formed in 1965. And they are an American band. They formed in California. I believe they originally formed in Venice Beach, California. So where is Venice Beach? Well, you think of beach, California. Ooh. So you're thinking of a warm area. A lot of people think all of California is warm. It really isn't. You get into Northern California, from San Francisco up to the north, it's fairly cool. So this is Southern California. So this is going to be around Los Angeles, that area. So that's where this band formed, in Southern California. They actually only lasted about 8 years. They were done in 1973. They came back briefly in 1978, I think it was. But they were done in 1973. And the reason they were done is actually quite sad. So the band formed again in 1965, and there were 4 members. They had 4 members of the band, and their lead singer, and he was also their lead lyricist, which means the writer of the words to the song. Remember, I mentioned in the introduction that the word lyrics means the word to the song. So the person that writes the lyrics is the lyricist. So their lead singer and lead lyricist was Jim Morrison. And unfortunately, he passed away in 1971. Now, it is possible he would have left the band anyway because he was taking a leave of absence. So that might have been the end of the band anyway. But probably, since he was taking a leave of absence, he would have come back. And Jim Morrison is quite popular. There's a lot of people that love old style rock and roll who love Jim Morrison. He's quite popular. Because he was really good. And so without him, they couldn't really continue. They did try. As I mentioned, they were around for 8 years, 1965 to 1971, when Jim Morrison died. That is not 8 years. That is 6 years. Or 7, if you include both ends of that. That's 6 or 7 years. So what happened? All right, so they tried to fill other performers in for Jim Morrison. And so they did this for about a couple more years. And then they finally broke up in 1973. It was just impossible to replace Jim Morrison. He was the face of the Doors. He is what the Doors were all about. It was Jim Morrison. The other 3 members, you can't say they weren't popular because the Doors themselves were popular. So the other three members, of course, were popular as well. But Jim Morrison was really the face, like I said. He was the lead singer. He was the front man, is what we call kind of the face of a band. It's the front man. So he was the front man for the Doors. So when he was done in 1971, when he passed away, that was pretty much it. As I said, they did try to fill in for him, but there was no way you were going to replace Jim Morrison. Now, the Doors are really, honestly, shockingly good. Some people think they might be one of the best bands of all time. The only reason you don't hear them ranked up there with the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or the Eagles is because they were only around for about 6 years with Jim Morrison. They were around for 8 years, but 6 with Jim Morrison. So that's it. 6 years. It's a pretty short time. Pretty short time. So that's why they don't have the level of popularity of some of the other bands. Now, the way I say that, it makes it sound like they're not very popular. They are very popular among people that like older rock music. They're extremely popular. So it's not that there's no popularity there. I just mean they're a little less popular than some of those really top bands. And that's really just because they only lasted 6 years. And they really were very good. The number of hits they had in such a short time. I'm going to mention some of their other music at the end of the program. That's what I normally like to do, to try to tell you some other songs you may want to listen to. And I have a list of 5 songs in addition to the one we're going to talk about today, Riders on the Storm. So that's 1 song per year. And I'm only telling you they're really top hits. So every year they had a really big hit, basically. Now, of course, these weren't every year. Sometimes they had 2 in 1 year or something like that. But on average, it was a really huge hit every year, on average. So, as I said, a really big band, a really popular band. Unfortunately, they were pretty much done in 1971. They didn't disband until 73, but Jim Morrison died in 1971. And sadly with Jim Morrison, they don't even really know why he died. They said it was heart failure, but they didn't do an autopsy, and he was only 27 years old. It was a mystery. He died in Paris. Even though he was American, he was living in Paris, France at the time. And he had lived there for just a few months because he had just taken his leave of absence. So it was pretty recent after he left the band that he died. All right, so I don't usually like to talk about genre. Actually, I say that all the time on this program, and I always talk about genres. But I still don't like talking about it because a lot of bands mix genres, and it's an art. That's what makes it fun. It's music. There are endless numbers of ways you can combine things. That's what makes music so beautiful. There's unlimited ways you can do things with music. And so I don't like talking about genre because a lot of bands aren't one genre. These guys pretty much are one genre. The Doors is pretty much just classic rock. I'm not going to say they don't mix in other elements. For example, some people might even think of them more as kind of alternative rock, just because of some of the sounds they use and things like that. Although alternative rock really wasn't even a phrase back in 1965. But using our modern terminology, some people might think of them more like that. But basically it's just classic rock. That's what it is. Okay. So let's talk about the song a little bit. Again, the song is Riders on the Storm, and it came out in 1971. Now, the interesting thing about 1971, obviously, that's the same year that Jim Morrison died. So this came from their album LA Woman, LA Woman, which was obviously their last album because this was right before Jim Morrison died. And what's also interesting about this is when they were recording, this was the final song that they recorded for that album. So this is really the last song that Jim Morrison ever did. So that makes it kind of special. And it was also one of their most popular songs. And I think it still would have been that popular even had Jim Morrison not died. In fact, I think it came out before he died and it was popular. So the popularity does not have much to do with the fact that it was Jim Morrison's last song. It's popular because it's a good song. Now, the one thing that is a little tricky about the song, though, even though I said it's a good song, it's really the music that's good. The tricky part is, what does it mean? What is it even about? So, what I can tell you is that I think it is mostly about living a difficult life. But honestly, it's a little bit hard to tell. I've tried to do some research on it, and their producer that was producing this album actually left the band because he hated the song, because he thought it was like a pub song or something like that. So what that tells me is it doesn't really have much meaning. So because of that, it might be a little difficult to figure out what it means. I think, looking at the lyrics, it's about a difficult life. But even when I researched this for this program, I mean, I didn't do exhaustive research. I didn't research for days and days and days to figure out what is this song about. But the research I did, I couldn't really come up with much. And it may be because there is no meaning. It's also possible that we just don't know because it wasn't explained. Keep in mind, Jim Morrison is the main lyricist for the band. He died pretty much right when this song came out. So, unless he told someone else what it's about, we lost the answers when he passed away. We have no answers. So it's hard to know what the song is about. So when we go through the lyrics in the second half, we're mainly going to talk about any sayings or words that are difficult to understand, or slang terms. We're not going to try to talk about the meaning too much. We'll talk about it a little bit. For example, the very name Riders on the Storm has a meaning to it, which I think gives me the idea that this is about a difficult life. So we will talk a little bit about some of the meaning of the song, only because we need to understand the meaning of the words. So we'll talk about that a little bit in the second half, but we're mostly going to focus on the meaning of the words, slang, idioms, things like that. All right. Anyway, even though it's a little difficult to understand what the song is about, it's still a very good song. So let's get to the song. For those of you joining us via YouTube, you know how this works. We can't really show the video because of copyright issues. So we've got a link in the upper right corner for you. Click on that. That will take you to the song. That'll take you to the music video. And then once that's done, you can jump back over here to this video. And if you are listening some other way, streaming or radio, you should have no problem. We are able to embed the audio, so if you're just getting audio of this program, just keep on listening, because we will have the song for you right now. All right, let's get to the song.
Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Okay, welcome back to part 2 of our musical musings program. That was Riders on the Storm by The Doors. And that song, as I mentioned in the first part, I believe is about a difficult life. We don't really know what it's about exactly, but it seems like that. It's kind of about a person that's on the road, which is why it's riders. And when you think about riders, it might be someone on motorcycle or something like that. Although in the second verse, or the first verse rather, sorry, we start with the chorus. That's why I said it was the second verse. It's the first verse. It comes after the chorus. It sounds like they're traveling in a car. So it's not clear exactly how they're traveling. The first verse again, excuse me. The first verse is definitely traveling in a car. But when you talk about riders, it sounds like you're on a motorcycle. So again, unclear. A lot of this is unclear. So we're going to mostly focus on what the words mean, if there's any slang, things like that. All right, so we start out this song with the chorus. We don't really get that very often with songs, but they do that here. We have the chorus. Riders on the storm, riders on the storm. So they repeat that line twice. So what does that even mean? That's the title of the song, and we start out with it right away. What does that mean? Well, if you're riding on a storm, that means there's a lot of turmoil, a lot of problems. It's difficult. And that's why I think this song is about a difficult life. That's how we start it. We come right into the song with Riders on the Storm. So you're dealing with a lot of things. I mean, you can't ride a storm, but if you think of yourself sitting on top of a tornado, that's going to be crazy. You can't really sit on top of a tornado, but if you were doing that, that would be crazy. So there's a lot of wild things going on. It's a crazy life. It's a difficult life. All right, and then the next line says, into this house we're born, into this world we're thrown. Okay, this is another indication that we're talking about a difficult life. Into this house we're born. All right, that's fine. Doesn't describe what kind of house. My guess is it might be a difficult family situation, just because we're talking about a difficult life. But it doesn't really describe it, so hard to know exactly what they're saying there. But then it says, into this world we're thrown. So what does he mean there? Into this world we're thrown. Being thrown into something. This is actually an idiom. Or even, you could even say it's slang, since it's thrown into whatever, so we don't have a real full saying there. So it's hard to call it an idiom. Being thrown into something means that you're not prepared for it, but you have to deal with it anyway. So it says, into this world we're thrown. It means that whatever happened in your life before that, your parents, your school, your community, whatever it was, didn't prepare you to deal with the world, to deal with the problems, getting a job and figuring out finances and everything, responsibility, everything like that. It could also mean that the family life was so bad that you had to leave your home when you were still a child, like 14, 15, 16 years old. And that's probably why they start out with, into this house we're born. So when you're thrown into something, again, it means you're not prepared for it. You're not prepared for it, okay? So since this is an English program, let's pretend you have never studied any English ever in your life, and all of a sudden you have to take an advanced English class. You would be getting thrown into the English class. Okay, then it continues on, like a dog without a bone, or an actor out on loan. Okay, so like a dog without a bone. So that means, someone that doesn't have what they need. So again, they're not prepared. an actor out on loan. Not really sure exactly what that means, but if they're out on loan, to be out on loan means that someone is paying to borrow something for a short time. That's a loan. So an actor being out on loan probably means that the actor is going out to do something they're not used to doing. So again, not prepared. That's what this is all about. Being thrown into the world. And then the chorus finishes by just repeating the introduction line, Riders on the Storm. So again, all of that seems to be about a difficult life. Again, nothing's entirely clear there, but that's what it seems like. All right, now we get to verse 1. There's a killer on the road. His brain is squirming like a toad. Okay, that's a weird line. All right, so there's a killer on the road. The way this sounds as this verse continues, I think it just means what it says. There's a killer on the road. Now, as we get further in the verse, what you'll see is it sounds like this is a person walking on the side of the road. At this time in America, it was very common for someone to hitchhike. You might not even know what that word means because it's so uncommon now. A hitchhiker is someone that's walking down the road looking for someone to pick them up and drive them somewhere. So they usually use their thumb. They'll put their thumb up like this behind them, and they'll kind of walk backwards, and that means they want to ride. That means they want to ride. They're hitchhiking. So that's what a hitchhiker is. It's someone that's looking for a ride. And it's usually the person that picks them up is someone that's being nice because they won't have to pay for the ride. Now, they may not take, the person picking them up may not take them all the way to where they want to go. Like there are people that would hitchhike all the way across the country. And so someone will pick them up and take them 10 kilometers and then drop them off because they have to go somewhere else. And then they'll start hitchhiking again till someone else picks them up and takes them another 10 or 15 or 5 kilometers. And they just keep doing that until they get to where they're going. So, I think we're talking about a hitchhiker here, as you'll see as we get later in this verse. And as I said, I think it just means what it says. It's a killer. He's a killer. He's a murderer. So there's a killer on the road. So it's a hitchhiker who is a murderer. And that actually was a fear back at that time. Most people who were hitchhiking were perfectly friendly people. Most people who picked up hitchhikers were perfectly friendly people. But every once in a while, you would hear stories of a bad hitchhiker who would kill the person that picked them up, steal their money, steal their car, and drive off. And there were also stories of bad people who picked up hitchhikers. They'd pick up the hitchhiker and kill the hitchhiker. And they might do bad things to the hitchhiker before they killed them. So there were these stories about that. So that's what this is. Killer on the road. It's a hitchhiker who's a murderer. His brain is squirming like a toad. That's weird. Squirming means to move around kind of weirdly and just like you're uncomfortable. So his brain is uncomfortable. You can imagine that with a killer. He's a little bit crazy. Squirming like a toad. A toad is another word for a frog. Actually, it's not another word for a frog. They are a little bit different, but they're very similar. They're almost the same thing. If you saw a toad, you might say, oh, look, a frog. They are a little bit different, but they're basically the same thing. So I don't know that a toad really squirms. That's kind of a weird line, but okay, that's how they wrote the song. So just the main point of that line is that his brain is squirming. So he's a little bit crazy. So this is a crazy killer. So it's a crazy killer. Take a long holiday. Let your children play. Okay? There's nothing weird about that line. So we're talking about they're taking a long holiday, which actually it's kind of weird that they use this word because we don't usually use that word in America. We say take a long vacation. Holiday is used in British English for a vacation. Holiday in America means like a special day like Christmas or New Year's. Songkran would be a holiday. We don't use that word in America for vacation very often. But he does here, and it's fine. We do occasionally. It's just not very common. Vacation and holiday are not the same thing in America, in American English. So he means a long vacation. When he says take a long holiday, let your children play. Okay, so let your children play because you're on vacation. If you give this man a ride, sweet family will die. Killer on the road. All right, I don't think there's anything special or confusing there. Means what it says. If you give this man a ride, okay, so to give someone a ride, that means you're picking him up. So he's hitchhiking, you're picking him up. You put him in your car. So your sweet family will die. Bad, not good, not good. Killer on the road. All right, so that verse ends pretty easy. I mean, it's bad ending. Your family is going to die if you pick him up. But easy enough to understand. Okay, and then we get a musical break, and then we go to verse 2. Girl, you gotta love your man, and then it repeats that. Girl, you gotta love your man. Gotta is short for got to. And that's not actually correct English. You wouldn't say you got to. You would say you have got to. That's the proper way to say that. You have got to. Sometimes in English, we like to shorten things. Like you'll sometimes hear people say have to, they'll say have to, instead of have to. Or instead of going to, they'll say gonna. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. It means I'm going to do that. So gotta means that you must. It means you have got to. It means you must. So what this line is saying is, for the women, you must love your man, okay? The next line, take him by the hand, make him understand. The world on you depends, our life will never end. All right, so what does that mean? All right, so take him by the hand. That's easy enough. That means when you take someone by the hand, it doesn't mean you're just holding their hand. It means you're leading them. When you take someone by the hand, it means you're leading them, and it's usually in a nice way. Like, for example, if you have a little child and you're walking across the street, you will usually grab their hand. You're taking them by the hand. You're leading them across the road. So, and it's to make them safe. So it's usually done in a nice way. Sometimes if a parent is angry, it's not done very nicely. They'll grab them by the hand and pull them across the road. But usually it's done nicely. So this is a nice thing. Take him by the hand and make him understand. So make him understand what? Well, that's not really clear. I think this is what the next line is supposed to mean. As I said, this is a hard song to really understand. It says, the world on you depends. Our life will never end. So I think what she's saying, what it's saying here is, the world on you depends. I think it's talking about the girl making the man understand that the world, or at least their world, because it says our life will never end, so their life together, so at least their world depends on him. I think that's what that's saying. It could mean the world depends on the girl to make the man understand. But since we don't understand what, I think it's the first meaning that I gave you. So I think the girl is trying to make him understand that the world, or again, their world. When I say their world, I mean their life. So everything around them, their life. So this couple, all of their life depends on him. So, and then the verse ends with, "Gotta love your man again." So again, I don't want to talk too much about what this all means, but it is a little confusing given the rest of the song is about a difficult life. What's the purpose of that? That verse doesn't seem to mean that. What I think this verse is trying to do, or trying to say, is that this man is having a difficult life. That's what the song's about. Okay, or at least the chorus. That first verse is a little bit weird, right? The killer on the road and picking up the... okay. But at least the chorus seems to be about difficult life. So I think this is trying to get the man to settle down. Because people that have a difficult life often are not... They do crazy things. They do maybe things they shouldn't do. They're not very calm people. I think what this is trying to say is the girl is telling him that their life depends on him being stable. Get a job, act normal, don't do crazy things, don't do things that are dangerous, keep safe, things like that. Trying to convince him that he's needed. A lot of times these people with difficult lives also don't think they're needed. That's why they live the dangerous life. That's why they do the crazy things, because they think nobody cares. So I think this is actually a very nice verse. It's saying, I love you, I need you, so let's try to make something of our life. I think that's what that verse is trying to say. All right, we get another musical break, then we get the chorus again, and that's actually it. We just have 2 verses in this song and the chorus. That's the end of the song. And it finishes off just repeating the title line, Riders on the Storm. It repeats that several times, and the song is over. All right, so that's it. That is Riders on the Storm by The Doors. And as always, when I close this out, I always try to get my listeners to go and listen to more of their music. I usually try to pick bands that are really good and have quite a bit of good music. In our episode last week, I did pick a band that has only like one really popular song. But I don't usually do that. It's just a really interesting song. That's why I wanted to do that one last week. But The Doors, as I mentioned earlier in part 1, they actually have a lot of really popular songs. So some of the other songs you might want to listen to from them are Break On Through, Light My Fire, People Are Strange, Hello, I Love You, and L.A. Woman. There are a few other songs that other people also rank really high, so this is not even the end of the list of their great songs. These are just the ones I think are their best songs, so these are the best ones to me. And my favorite one by them is the one we just did today, Riders on the Storm. So go listen to more of their music. They have a lot of great music. Again, it's The Doors, D-O-O-R-S, The Doors. Go listen to their music and enjoy it. All right. Thank you for joining us for today's Musical Musings program. Please stay with us and tune back in next week for another great song. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.
Musical musings, musical musings, musical